Hey everyone, we're reaching the end of the month here, and we're also bringing this chapter of DPS exploration to a close. We've talked about primary, specials, power weapons, and now we're finally going to talk about ability DPS in the Edge of Fate. Definitely an interesting topic, and let's go ahead and get started with our outline. So, first, we're going to be talking about what criteria make for a good DPS ability in the current sandbox. Then we're going to talk about melees, and grenades, and supers, then some special cases like Hellion, Arc Soul, that sort of thing. And then finally, a little summary to leave you guys with. Not going to be really much surprises in this video, but I hope you still enjoy it regardless. Let's go ahead and get started with criteria. So criteria for recommendation, a lot shorter than the weapon stuff because abilities are pretty straightforward, right? First, you got DPS. Second, you got fire team size. Fire team size is related to upkeep because the more people you have in a fire team, generally really high damage ability strategies require a little bit of greed. Like people are going to be going and killing ads to keep up certain stacks. So the more you have people in a fire team, the less likely this is going to be kind of consistent, I guess, behavior. Then you have range. Some abilities like grapple melees, you're just not going to use on certain targets because they're just way too far away from you. And then finally, you have upkeep, which is kind of related to fire team size. It's just how much micromanagement do you need to keep up with this ability playstyle, to keep up stacks, stuff like that. So this is what we're looking for in a DPS ability. Also, for reference, Opaque Hourglass, which is considered to be top tier heavy damage in the current sandbox, and I guess rockets, even without Temporal Blast, are somewhere around this area. They sit at 6.2k DPS, 6.2k DPS, so just keep that in mind. So first up, we have melees. Let's go ahead and talk about grapple melee as our starting point. So grapple melee on Hunter, 14k DPS with 1-2 punch, biotic enhancement, so Synthos, combination blow times 3, and facet of courage. Now, this is without actually Banner of War, without Stylish Executioner, so it could be in theory even a little bit higher. But even without those things, grapple melee on Hunter is still insane. All the stuff we've talked about in the previous videos, where I was like, oh my god, Mint Retrograde is crazy. It does 3.5, 4.8k DPS. Oh my god, the bow is crazy. It does 6k DPS. The rocket's crazy, 7k DPS. And then you have grapple melee, which is doing 14,000 DPS. So yeah, this is probably still going to get adjusted in the coming months, in the coming weeks, in the coming patches. So enjoy it while it lasts, but 14k DPS. Grapple melee on Titan as a reference point, because some people were asking, with just 1-2 punch, Banner of War, and biotic enhancements, so Synthos, around 8k DPS. And then we have some less impressive numbers. Glaive melee with Winter Bite, even with combination blow times 3 and Triton Vice, and doing the 2 light 1 heavy slam cancel combo, that's going to net you 4.6k DPS. Now in theory, you could add in a couple other enhancements here, like Banner of War, but even still, grapple melee is just a better starting point compared to glaive melee, thanks to its synergy with stuff like 1-2 punch and its higher base damage after the glaive melee base damage nerfs. Fleshed Storm, I thought I'd throw this in here because of the 5 feet stuff that people were doing with it. It obviously got nerfed, but even post-nerf, 11 volleys, Banner of War, Wish Dragon's Talons, Insatiable from Apotheosis, Song of Flame, and you do around 4,400 DPS, which is still pretty decent, I suppose, but there are weapons that are going to do that well, and, you know, Fleshed Storm is just not really worth running, specifically Strand Titan, and kind of building into this specific playstyle just to use it on a boss. It's not really that level of DPS anymore. Throwing Hammer at 4,200, I thought this was pretty impressive, to be honest with you. The only downside here is that your damage super is going to be pretty mediocre. We're going to talk about supers in a second, but yeah, Throwing Hammer with Synthos and Roaring Flames and 1-2 punch, 4,200, and this is really, really easy to just keep up and just keep smacking a boss with. So 4,200, that's like good heavy weapon DPS. Not good, but like pretty decent heavy weapon DPS. It's just spamming hammers with 1-2 punch. Pretty impressive stuff. Not meta shaping or game breaking or anything, but pretty decent, I thought. Next up, we have grenades. Grenades here, this is all swap DPS, by the way, right? So the previous slide was sustained DPS because a lot of those melees you could just do consistently over time. This is swap DPS. So for example, Magnetic Grenade with Chaos Accelerant, aka Handheld Supernova. This is the DPS of like shooting a weapon and then swapping to this and then holding grenade, charging it at just the right amount, letting go, and then going back to shooting your weapon. So you're not going to be able to hit 7k DPS consistently because your grenade is not going to be up as soon as, you know, you cast it, right? And it's pretty much impossible. So 7k DPS with Death Throws times 5 from Verity. Thermite Grenade actually ended up being the top realistic performer with Verity that's not a Chaos Accelerant Magnetic Grenade. So I threw that in there. This is including with stacking. So I threw like 4 or 5 nades. And even when all of them were stacked up like this and, you know, they're sharing ignition values, the average damage per nade was still enough to bring out this value. So still pretty impressive. And then the first non-verity value here is going to be Solar Grenade on Touch of Flame, but this is with Sunbracers, right? I didn't actually write that in the notes here, but you can kind of assume. 4 grenades, melee kill time included, Touch of Flame, Ember of Ashes. Sunbrace is pretty underrated for damage on certain bosses. Like you guys may have seen in my streams, I used to use Sunbracers on Apoptes, and I would regularly match the damage or do more damage than people that were literally doing heavy weapon DPS on semi-optimized loadouts on Hunter and stuff like that. So, you know, Solar Grenade with Touch of Flame. Sunbracers, obviously, you're not going to have 100% uptime with melee kills being constantly available, but I do think it's a little bit underrated. I think Solar Grenades with Touch of Flame in general are quite underrated, and I think way too many people are paying attention to mediocre grenades like Fusion Grenade and Trip Mine Grenade. Storm Grenade with Touch of Thunder, that's going to be 5.3k. I included this here because it is the highest performing like Hoyle Titan nade from back in the day when people used to use Hoyle Pulse and Hoyle Storms for, you know, damage during Season of Plunder. This is a kind of representation of that. It's not terrible, right? It's not terrible. The DPS is 5.3k. That's higher than most heavy weapons could even dream of being at. So yeah, pretty decent. This one just requires you to keep throwing nades. Like it doesn't require you to get Verity stacks. It doesn't require you to get a melee kill. This one you could just be on Thruster and Thunderclap and just throw Storm Grenades like in the old days, and 5.3k is pretty good. That's pretty good. That's better than, like, you know, Temporal Mint, so pretty decent stuff. And then you have Fusion Grenade with Touch of Flame, which is at 3008 DPS. Fusion Grenades, a large portion of their damage is actually credited to the ignition, and so they're going to scale worse than a lot of the other stuff here. Thermite Grenades and Solar Grenades, their base raw damage, even without ignitions, is pretty high. So, you know, Fusion Grenades, in my opinion, super overrated. I think Starfire in general is also extremely overrated. I think stuff like Young Omkar, Spine with Trip Mines, I didn't even include it here because the DPS was so low. Just super overrated in my opinion. If you want something spammable, I would look to Touch of Flame, Solar Grenades on Apotheosis or Sunbracers, or Touch of Thunder, Storm Grenades on Titan. Obviously on Titan, there are other things that people are more attracted to. Definitely still an interesting consideration, I would say, for grenade DPS. I would say some of these other grenades, like I mentioned, like Yas Trip Mines and Starfire Fusions, are just being given a little bit too much, I think, attention disproportionately compared to their actual DPS, compared to some of the stuff that we're talking about on this slide. Okay, next up we have supers. Supers, you know and love them. Golden Gun Marksman with Celestial Nighthawk. Swap DPS is going to be 30k. I would say the top 3 supers here, don't really worry about their swap DPS because in reality, they have similar cast times, and the only reason why their DPS is fluctuating so much, like why Nighthawk looks so much better, is because this assumes that you're already holding out a Nighthawk and then you shoot it instantly and then go back to shooting your weapons, right? So not really like a super realistic DPS comparison here. I would say the big divide is going to be between the top 3 and the bottom 2 because one of them is a burst super, one of them is a roaming super. So yeah, Goldie, Marksman, Celestial Nighthawk, all those modifiers. I would say look at the total damage, right? Thunder Crash obviously has the highest total damage. Nova Bomb Cataclysm requires 6 Feast of Light stacks, so it's not sustainable for spamming during a damage phase unless you have a lot of orbs being made by your team. So I would say the top 3 supers, there's a reason why T-Crash is on top. The effective DPS between all of these, especially given that Golden Gun requires a crit and stuff like that, like T-Crash is going to be pretty much the same, but it has higher total damage and has no proc requirement, right? So it doesn't require you to be radiant and sitting outside of a well. It doesn't ask anything of you, actually. It just requires that you smack your body into the boss with your big light blue super. And then next, we have Silk Strike and Song of Flame. We talked about this in the super investigation video when it came to melee stat stacking. This assumes you have bugged, quote-unquote bugged Shield Crush and 200 melee, 200 grenades, stuff like that for Song of Flame. The DPS is okay. You know, it's pretty decent. It's up there with some of the top-tier heavy options, especially Silk Strike. And the total damage is pretty decent as well. So if you can pair this with something like a Finality's Augur Turret, which will add approximately another 1k on top of whatever you're doing, pretty decent stuff. Pretty decent stuff. I'm not going to say it's like meta-defining or game-breaking, but you could take this into a day 1, to be honest with you. If it's not disabled, then definitely perform pretty well. And the total damage is definitely there to kind of supplement whatever you're doing with your weapons and definitely lowers, I would say, some of the burden of whatever you need to do with your weapons during this period. So pretty good stuff from supers. I would say Silk Strike and Song of Flame, that interaction is almost definitely going to be changed. Just focus on the top 3 really. Those are the classics. Nova Bomb, not refreshable. Goldie is obviously still pretty good, but has significantly lower total than T-Crash. T-Crash is the king for a reason. Okay, next we have some special cases. Mostly going to be tick related stuff, right? So you have Hellion with Ember of Ashes, 461 DPS, and if you account for the Eunoia buff and Consul's Pitch, max range, whatever, potentially 981 DPS post Eunoia buff plus 200 grenade added on top of that for a 65% gain with the upcoming Ashen Iron patch. Interesting option. has scaling problems. If you have multiple Hellions in your team or someone's using D-Breath or something, you're going to have problems when it comes to improving your DPS. But the actual projectile damage from Hellion is not terrible. So 981 DPS is nothing to scoff at. That's basically like a finality turret coming from just doing Hellion damage, right? So this will actually maybe make me reconsider my recommendations for Eunoia and Hellion in general compared to some other stuff. We're definitely going to look at the DPS difference between just using Hellion with no Eunoia exotic and seeing how different that is from using Eunoia, because Eunoia is also getting buffed as well. So I want to take a look at both of those things and compare them and see if they're worth using over something like a Sanguine or an Apotheosis for Warlock or Solar Warlock specifically DPS. Storm's Keep is up next. This is calculated with the maximum practical bolt charge rate. So this was with, I don't know, Thunderlord, Lost Signal-Tics. I did this last season, but basically, how fast can you theoretically get bolt charge from 10 stacks to 10 stacks in one cycle? And the answer is, I think it's around every 1.45 seconds you can get a bolt charge off. And this is going to result in about 603 DPS, which is not that great, to be honest. I thought it would be a little bit higher, especially at this max fire rate, because most weapons, especially if you're using like precision weapons, stuff like that, you're not going to be charging bolt charge nearly as fast as every 1.45 seconds. So it is definitely better than Arc Soul, like I've written in this comment here, but it's not as good as some of the other tick stuff in this category. Still definitely worth having an Arc Titan on your team to kind of give everyone a free damage increase. But the damage increase isn't like something insanely crazy. It's more like it's probably like 10% for most weapon strategies, right? We talked about how, you know, around 5k DPS, 4k DPS, stuff like that. That's really where most damage strategies are going to sit. And if you add 600 DPS on top of that, I mean, that's not 20%, but it's like 10%, 11%, 12%, which is fine. You know, that's pretty good. And having an Arc Titan on your team, I mean, it doesn't mean the T-Crash is going to be much worse or anything, right? You just don't have courage. So the T-Crash is still going to be good. Still worth having an Arc Titan on the team. Just thought I'd throw this in there for the kind of completeness' sake. And then finally, we have Arc Soul. Arc Soul, even when you're amplified, so you use a Getaway Artist Arc Soul, or you use like a, you know, base Arc Soul and you're amplified in some way. Yeah, not great. 298 DPS. If you add 200 Grenade with the buffs coming up, 492 DPS. That's like fine, but when you consider that the main draw of Arc Soul is providing it to your teammates, comparing it to Storm's Keep, the DPS increase is really not that significant at all. So yeah, I would say, and the downside is you have to be on Arc Warlock. And Arc Warlock, I would say, suffers a lot more than Arc Titan when it comes to compromises you need to make on something like a day one. So I would say, yeah, not really worth it in my opinion. It's like fine, I guess, but I wouldn't switch to Arc Warlock, especially given how limited Warlocks tend to be in the current day one environment. You tend to just have as many Warlocks as you need for Wells, and then everyone else is playing more survivable classes, more consistent classes, better damage classes, right? So in my opinion, yeah, Arc Soul, not the greatest right now. I mean, it's fine. I mean, the DPS gained it's decent, but like it's still not particularly breathtaking or anything, and definitely not as viable as Storm's Keep because of environmental conditions. Okay, finally, we have our summary. So to no one's surprise, my melee recommendation is Grapple Melee. 14,000 DPS, even without Banner or Stylish added in. Absolutely still the strongest situational damage strategy in the game, even post Lyre nerf, right? So this is with Lyre gone. Synthos is worse, more annoying upkeep. Still the DPS is crazy high. Then we have Grenades. Grenades are similarly situational compared to melees. However, I will say I'm going to go to bat here for Touch of Flame Solar Grenades, right? Unlike Handheld Supernova, where you have to basically be base tanking a boss that is not stomping you whatsoever, and you need Verity stacks for it to be very strong, and it's not as refreshable as stuff like Touch of Flame Solar Grenade, because you have to remember, Solar is great for grenade spamming because of stuff like Benevolence, whereas on Arc, where you have Flux Grenades, on Void, where you have, you know, Handheld Supernova, there's just not as many supporting cast buffs there that can really help you get your grenade back fast. And so with Solar, you know, Solar Grenades themselves with Touch of Flame, excellent total damage. If you're able to stick them inside of a boss or like in the middle of their hitbox and the boss doesn't move too much, also excellent. I would say great paired with Apotheosis, right? Because the big downside for Sunbracers, as you probably know, is that most damage faces don't have readily available melee kills for you that are not going to be stolen by your teammates or destroyed by splash damage. So Apotheosis guarantees that you get 4 Touch of Flame, or 5 actually if you throw, like, you know, before you place your well or whatever. You get 4 Touch of Flame Solar Grenades. So that's a lot of super, by the way. Solar Grenades, like globs, they all give you ticks of super. And I'm easily able to get my well back with Phoenix Diving, with Dynamo and stuff like that, on top of the active damage gains that I'm getting from my Solar Grenades ticking before my well runs out. It's low-key like underrated. I would honestly try Apotheosis Touch of Flame Solar Grenades for those of you that are interested in a potential DPS exotic on Well for like a supportive Warlock and not like a raw damage Warlock where you'd want to be on something like Sanguine. So, you know, I think Warlocks find themselves playing that kind of supportive role in day ones and raid races and just underlight content a lot. So I think, I mean, I personally play Tractor and Well for my day one team, and I found Apotheosis to be very nice. I mean, you can start on Touch of Flame Healing Grenade during the encounter, and then you can swap over to Touch of Flame Solar Grenade right before damage, and then you easily just spam, you know, Solar Grenades and get your well back. So it's pretty nice. Helps with staggering the boss a little bit too. Pretty cool. And of course, you can be on Snap as well, so you can have like a Song of Flame-esque effect where you, you know, you can do that. And you can also pair this with Song of Flame too. Like when your Song of Flame ends, you could just spam throw Solar Grenades and Snap and stuff. It's pretty awesome. So that's cool. And then finally, super. I mean, Curiosity Crash. Need I say more? Most prominent damage super in the game right now. Unconditional damage boost, which is the big kicker. No precision requirement. And almost every boss in the game is Thunder Crashable. So I've literally gotten comments in the past where people say, I don't even know if it was, I don't know if it was a rage bait or not, but it was some like Titan main saying that like Thunder Crash is, you know, it's situational, right? You need to be able to T-Crash spot. Like, I don't know. We haven't had a boss in recent memory that's really not been T-Crashable. I mean, I guess Witness, if you didn't know how to like T-Crash his hand, was kind of annoying. And so you couldn't really play Titan, but most bosses, almost all bosses in this game are T-Crashable. And T-Crash is just such brain dead free damage. Just does so much damage. So yeah, T-Crash, still really good. Great swap DPS, great option. And it's probably going to stay that way for the foreseeable future. And you know, you're probably going to see a lot of Titans and day one raid races for tough final stands like you did see on Desert Perpetual. Okay, so that's pretty much it. That's all I have to say for this video. Tomorrow's video, I believe we are going to be talking about boss health in Destiny and how it changed between the Final Shape and Edge of Fate. We're going to be going over some new testing methodology stuff, and I have a little infographic that shows all the boss health in Destiny and how different some of the Desert Perpetual bosses are, for example, compared to past bosses, why they feel so beefy. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope you guys enjoyed maybe learning a thing or two about ability DPS, special DPS, primary DPS, whatever it might be when it comes to the current endgame PvE sandbox. So, I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll catch you later.